Hey, Paul.
Hey Fab, before
All
we
right.
start, I want to tell all our viewers I've been getting comments on my plant, and Fab just told me that my plant looks old and scraggly. It's actually a very healthy plant. It's just the way it looks. So
Yeah,
please don't judge my plant. And the older leaves die and fall. So
there you go. And the
I
other
love
leaves are on top. There you go.
it.
All right, cool. I have an interesting topic today. We always have an interesting topic, but today I'm excited about the topic. We're moving back into the sales operation type of thing, and it's to help reps have better conversations with their prospects. I
And help
entitled
managers help the reps.
Yes, exactly. I entitled the show "How to Move the Sales Conversation in Your Favor,"
Yeah.
and I think maybe I'll set the table a bit. I think um, it's easy to have to identify like a client's need or their problem, right? Because if you're talking to a salesperson, and if we're talking about discovery, we're not talking about cold calls, like you're a bit further in the sales process, right? You already established that you're going to have a 30, 40, 60-minute conversation and stuff like that. So sure, some clients might just be curious, especially if there's a demo attached to that discovery call. But overall they'll have some sort of a problem, right? That's what they accepted to talk to you. And but a lot of what you say, it's about diving deeper, really understanding, like, yeah, beyond the need, like, I need a new website, and like the why you need a new website, and what's the impact, and are there critical events, what's the urgency, and all that stuff. And you know I don't know, a lot is the right qualifier, but let's put it, a lot of the times, like, there's a need there, but the client's not always aware of the importance of it,
Yeah.
unless you're asking the good questions, right? Because you don't know what you don't know, right? It's not a zing on clients or anything. It's just like, you don't know what you don't know, right? So if I'm the co-founder and I don't know anything about web design, I'm picking an example, websites as an example because it's relatable. um, it's not my fault that I don't know what I don't know, right? So it is about asking those right questions to dive deeper. And the example I want to give, and then I'll hand over the virtual mic to you, is, in web design, something that HubSpot's popularized is something called growth driven design, where instead of doing the traditional web design project where you design a web page and then you develop it on the HubSpot CMS or WordPress or whatever, you actually sit with the client and you think about you work the strategic component of the site, like who's going to be visiting this page, what's this page all about, what's the goal of each page. And that becomes a very iterative, ongoing process, because you're putting out portions of the site at a time and you're optimizing the pages. And so it's less a matter of like, here's a design, it's developed, ciao, bye. So for you as a company, you get a lot more revenue, and for the client, they get a lot more value, right? Because it's not just like a someone thing. So that's the example I want to give. I'll pass over. How do you move the conversation in your favor?
Um. So what's your question?
You weren't paying attention. That's awesome.
No, and someone,
Okay.
sorry, something very loud happened outside my office and it distracted me. Uh,
Um,
there's something literally going on in the room. I think they're doing some kind of training, so I apologize if there's leaked over noise. Repeat.
No, so the general question was like, how do we move the sales conversation in our favor? So I think maybe we can start higher level, and like, why do you want the sales conversation to move in your favor? Because we have the problem, we have the need, right? I need a new website. My website's old and outdated, right? Problem, need. Like, why do we need to dive deeper than that?
Well, why do we need to dive deeper than that? Because I like to call it. There's like four levels of interest, right? When someone's buying from you, four levels. So the first one is they're just interested.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so they might come to your website. They have an interest, whatever I say website, but they come to find out more about you. And secondly, they're willing to listen to you.
Right,
And then thirdly, they're willing to buy.
right,
Wow, I'm going to buy from you. But the fourth level is you're a partner.
right.
You're a partner. They trust you. Not only will they buy from you, they will consider you a partner to whom they will go to get information from. So when you're having that sales conversation and, someone says, yes, I need a website, yada, 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 and you're having a conversation and then the person's kind of hemming and hawing because maybe it's not a priority for them. They might need a website, might need to renovate their manufacturing facilities. They might need to hire some new salespeople. Everything's set in a priority level.
Right.
You can't change that priority level unless you said something. I'm not sure if you said on the website or before, but you don't know what you don't know. Right. So maybe in having a conversation and bringing things out, you're going to make that prospect or that client realize, oh, hold on. I thought that was priority number 10, but really it should be priority number 1 because if I don't do this, then the other things won't happen. So that can happen just by having the questioning strategy focus on why it is that you want to change this website. Mm-hmm. So really what it boils down to is understanding your client's priorities and then you qualifying or disqualifying according to the urgency that is being implied in this conversation, right?
Right.
So that's pretty high level. So let me be more specific. You're having a conversation with someone. They've said to you, we need a new website. You're talking to them and you're sort of seeing that they're not that committed to it. They're just sort of shopping. Well, you need to find that out in your questions so that you know how much effort to put into it. When you say how to make that sales conversation better, you're not trying to change someone's mind on a priority if they have all the information. Where you might change their mind is if you feel they're missing a big part of the information that could create the fact that priority will go up higher,
Right.
Soon you'll only be able to sell on your website. Oh shit, my website is more important.
Right.
I don't know if that makes sense, but maybe we should give a few examples to really drive that home. But when you're having that sales conversation, you want to make sure that you're finding out all of the information and that you're relaying all the information to truly qualify the level of urgency your offer is at.
Right.
And you can be a shyster and try to push it up and create bullshit, but then you're being a shyster and you're being a screw artist. Really what you're trying to do is discover what it is you can do for them and why it's important, why it should be important to them, and really where you are in that level of priority.
Right. Okay. And so, because otherwise you kind of end up staying at that. If you don't do that, let's put it that way, is you end up staying at that superficial level, right? Where if I'm speaking to one web designer and I'm speaking to another one, and nobody's really diving deeper and showing that there's maybe more to your website than you realize, and showing through questioning, you just end up competing on price, right? Well, I'm going to go with Paul because he's cheaper than Fab, and that's it.
Yeah.
There's no real reason to go more expensive. And so when should you start? And this might be a silly question, but when should you start diving deeper, right? Like I'm guessing you don't want to go out of the gate, like first 5 minutes of the conversation.
That's actually a really good question because you shouldn't deep dive. You're always like, there's this thing. Some people say, oh, there's a qualification stage. I don't agree. I think you're always qualifying.
Right.
And that's probably the most important part of sales. So whenever you're talking to someone, you're always gauging, well, how important is this to them? And do I want to be putting time and energy into the conversation we're having? Right. So you're always qualifying. You're going to make mistakes sometimes. You're going to disqualify someone. You're going to realize your competition sold to them. You're going to be like, and vice versa. Hopefully you get, by qualifying, you're going to find the right people and spend your energy on the people that you should be talking to.
Right.
But you're always qualifying to decide, do I bring them to the next step, right? First, you're having that first conversation and you're talking to them and you see, oh, wow, there's really a problem, or not a problem, but they really do want to, set up a new website or have it move forward, or have it more of a flowing website that adjusts continuously. Okay, that's good. That's what we do. Then you're going to ask more questions to see if there's really a fit for you to help them. And then you might decide at one point, oh yeah, they want to do all this, but they're actually, starting to research and they're only going to be ready to do this in 1 year. Okay, well then you put them in your CRM to call them back in, 9 months.
Mhm.
Regular conversation with them once in a while to say, hey, how's it going? Sort of a follow-up so you stay top of mind in case something changes, right?
Right.
But you're not going to try to convince them now to do something they might only need in a year, and I'm
Right.
giving a silly example.
Yeah.
And the big part of sales is knowing where to put your energy.
Right.
I can go on the street and just start screaming out at the top of my lungs what I do, and
Yeah.
hopefully someone's driving by who needs my services. Well, yeah, but that's
Yeah.
pray, right?
Right.
So
And
that answer
yeah.
your question? So
Yeah.
when is soon? It's step by step. It's baby steps. Okay, they're qualified to go a little further. They're qualified to go a little further. Qualified to go. You just keep on going.
Yeah. And so what I'm understanding is that you don't need to, and you need to be mindful. I mean, obviously you have a sales process and sales methodology on how to execute that process, but so there's different steps along the way. But like what you said, you're constantly qualifying or constantly disqualifying because and people are different, right? Some people are very open and you can get a lot of information from them in 15 minutes, and some people are more reserved and more closed, and you might need more conversations and move your sales process along longer before you're able to get to, let's call it, the more meaty stuff, because people are people, and people are different. So they're talking about people. Who do you think we should be talking to? Because a few episodes ago we talked about decision makers, but we also know that the decision maker isn't necessarily the person who's going to be impacted by this. So they're just the ones that are stamping or signing off on the order or something like that. Like, who should you be trying to get the information from? Should it still be the decision maker because they see the overall impact on the business?
It's a very good question, and depending on the size of the company, let's say it's a huge enterprise, it's just a huge company, enterprise size type sales, right? So you might have a decision-making group.
Mm-hmm.
There might be a decision-making process that you can't circumvent. So you need to know how to talk to all the people that are part of the decision-making group. Hopefully you have a champion in there that, tells you what's really going on. So in that case, you're talking to many people.
Right.
Or you might be many people selling to many people, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're Ford trying to sell a fleet of buses to the U.S. government, chances are it's not just one guy talking to one guy,
right?
No. So that's at the high end. But really, when you can, you should always be speaking to the decision
maker. Right.
Because the decision maker is the guy who makes the decision, or the girl who makes the decision. They make the decision. That's right. The description of it, right? So, and if you can't speak to the decision maker, you might have to speak to an influencer. But you got to, that influencer, you don't have a choice. Yes, you might have to speak to, but ideally, you should always be speaking to a or one of the decision makers.
Yeah, yeah, and I think obviously the influencer is important, and there's various stages. And when we talked about how to speak with decision makers, we realized they don't need to always be involved at every stage of the process. They're busy. They might slow down the process because they can only talk to you every 6-8 weeks type of thing. But I think there's some elements in terms of understanding the bigger why and moving that sales conversation in your favor. You need to speak to somebody who has an overarching view of the project beyond just, this is the website, we've rebranded, we need something new, because you need to be able to show them that, well, if you want to work with me, I'm going to bring you more value, but the investment's going to be larger too. So if they're just getting a sheet of, just getting a quote by email, that doesn't really ring true. I mean, you can hope that it does, and I'm sure in some cases it does, but or at least trigger maybe another conversation. But I think overall, the decision maker is the best person to speak with about this.
Yes. I mean, so, it's interesting. We go in circles sometimes trying to figure out how to do these things, and I'm guilty of this too, right? So I'll be sitting down and I'm saying, oh, this thing's not moving forward, and I'm like, how can I push it forward? You're never pushing stuff forward,
No.
What you're really doing is you're uncovering the information to find out the truth. Now, what's also might happen is when you're having those discussions, you might inform your client of something that they hadn't thought of that will change their decision-making process. Now, that's important. That's where you're influencing them, because you're making them realize, hey, if you change your website within the next 3 months, we have more time to spend to it, and we can allocate more time, and you will be ready, for that big thing that you're doing in September. Whereas if you wait till August, you'll be last minute. Oh, I hadn't thought of it that way. Okay, let's move forward. So you're informing them of the benefits of doing it earlier, and that's how you might change things. But you're not. You might be bringing things to the table, but you're not making things. You're not pushing them. You're informing them of things that make them realize, oh yeah, and I'll tell you, it's sort of like when you're building a house, and if someone wants to sell you the paint colors when you just started digging the ground, and you're going, wow, geez, I hadn't thought of paint colors. And then the guy comes over and says, well, actually, you should really do this because there's a huge shortage on paint colors, and by the time you're ready to paint in a year, you might not have any of the paint colors you need or want. Oh, I hadn't thought of that. Okay, then you go home, you talk to your wife, you choose the paint colors, you're ready and you're set, right?
Yeah.
So that's an example of where the salesperson gives you information to bring you forward.
Right.
You still have to fit within the priority, or it'll be, well, I don't give a crap. I'm just going to have gyprock walls or exposed wood. Okay, so then that paint salesperson should say, well, I'm going to move on. Then it's not the right person. So it's really in that dialogue that if you're asking the right questions, you're finding out the right things, and you're giving the right information in relation to what that person needs, you'll be able to qualify. Qualifies on this side. You'll be able to qualify what's going on.
Right. Yeah, and I think and I just want to be clear, like when we're talking about like things to identify, it's really moving beyond like their needs and their problems, which are important. Obviously, you need to know why you talk to them, right? Like your paint example, like you need to know that the person needs to paint their room, but yeah, then you need to dive deeper. Like, is how important is color to you? You want these funky colors, blah blah. Well, you should know that there's paint shortage. So these are the last 3 cans in the city. We don't know when we're getting some back. So even if you're planning on painting in 6 months, you should get them now. So the same goes for sales, right? Like, yeah, my example of the website. Fine, we need a website. It's ugly right now. It's outdated. But okay, but why now? Type of thing. And then, but what does the website mean for your business, right? And so on and so forth. And then if you're realizing that it's just not a good fit, they just want a cheap website that just looks more modern, they could go find somebody else ultimately.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
And sometimes, like if I think of my services or your services, a lot of businesses or anyone who's in services, a lot of businesses can run without what you sell, what I sell, what they sell. Some of the things are not essential, and they will never be a priority,
right?
Because they just operate. So then your job is to, sometimes you get stuck in neutral, just go in a circle. Things never happen. And generally when you're in that circle, what you have to do is pull back and come backwards.
Yeah.
Right. So if you've gone through the sales process, you knew there was a need, you understood the motivation. There was even sometimes acquiescence to the fact that, yeah, we need your services, Fab. We need your services, Paul. We need your services, George. And then all of a sudden you go into neutral.
Yeah.
Well, it's a little bit like a game of chess. Sometimes you're at a point where I don't want to move that piece back. Sometimes you got to move the piece back. So what is moving that piece back in sales is going back to that original question. Right. Hey, Mr. Client, when we spoke for the first time 7 years ago, you told me that, this was a priority. You told me that you really wanted to fix this. Is this still the case? And you shouldn't be afraid to go back to reconfirm the things that are keep pushing the gearbox into neutral. And if you're realizing that there's other issues, there's other fears, there's other objections, well, then you have to deal with them. Yeah. Or you'll disqualify and say, look, this person just, they're wishy-washy. Because in real life, we often do these sales examples where people know what they want or know what they want. But in real life, people are often wishy-washy themselves. Like they're going back thinking, "Oh yeah, it's true. If I do that, the new websites can do this. Oh yeah, but last time I did that, we spent so much money and it didn't work." Or but the roof is leaking on the manufacturing facility. I gotta, so it's often not that clear. So that's why you have to reconfirm and have those conversations and not be afraid to go backwards and say, well, is this really a priority? Because maybe in what you sell, not you particular, but in what one sells, it's got to be, you might have a closing ratio of 10%, and that's great, or 1%, and that's great. So you need to decide, where am I going to qualify this thing and make sure it's the right thing. Sorry, that was
Right.
really winded.
And so, like if I try to wrap it up, from what I understood so far, what you're saying is like, how do you move the sales conversation more in your favor is you need to, obviously, first step, if there's a step, is understand that you need to move beyond, or accept that you need to move beyond just the problem. What problem do they have? You need a new website, we do that, great. Let's do it. And really understand the why behind this new project, so that you can identify like things like urgency, and are they like, these are all things that you brought up, like you need to identify the urgency of the project, the commitment to the project,
commitment, urgency. You have to quantify the value of what they're fixing.
Right.
You have to understand the decision-making process, and then and continuously qualify, and then you're ready to go. Those first three things that you do first, which is identify the challenge, then challenge, opportunity, the need, the want, level 2, and then the motivation. Those are all great, but then you got to say, are they committed to really solving this thing? Do they want to invest? Are they willing to invest? And what's the value of this thing to them? The urgency, and then go. And you and a lot of those things, when you're discovering the motivation, the problem, the challenge, you should know all of these things. You should know everything that's going on. You should understand the issues, and then you just need to anchor those things: urgency, timing, urgency, decision-making process, commitment, ready. Do they have the cash to do it? And have you quantified it? Do you know the value of this thing?
Awesome. I'm good. You have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, well, and I forget how you said exactly how to bring the conversation. How do you say it again? I forget the words.
How to move the sales conversation in your favor.
You're going to move the conversation in your favor by finding out if this is a real qualified prospect or not all the time. So sometimes it's to say, I want him to buy, or I want her to buy, but they just ain't qualified. They don't have it all together. So you're moving it in your favor by saying, see you later.
Yeah. No, and that's it. And it goes back to, you're moving it in your favor by going beyond the needs and the problems, right? Like you said before, like the urgency, the commitment, and the decision-making process. Like if you don't understand all that, you're not moving the sales conversation in your favor, because it still stays in their court, so to speak. Like, I have a problem, I need a website, and I know that I need a website, so I just need to find the best agency out there to do it for me. And when you stay at that level, the best usually means some Venn diagram of quality and trust and price, right? Like, it's not so cheap that I can't trust them, but it's not so expensive that, and it's all built on trust. Like, it has to be and so if you want to move beyond that and move like completely in the trust element, or almost exclusively in the trust element, you need to dive deeper. You need to understand like all the things you've just talked about, decision making. How are they going to make the decision? Who's going to be involved in this? Like you said before, if it's enterprise, it could be 20 people making the decision, right? It's a committee decision. If it's an SMB, it's maybe the founder, co-founder, CEO, president. You need to understand, are they committed to this thing? They have a problem. They know that they can make more money, but they're just not committed because things are moving well enough, or they don't have the staff right now to support a new project, or so they're just not committed. And so you're not moving things forward if you're staying at that high level. And if you can't move beyond, I mean, maybe I'm being dramatic, but if you can't move beyond, it's either they're not ready, right? They're just not willing to give more information, or you need to revamp your sales skills a bit.
Well, yeah, and there's both of those things, right? I often hear sales leaders or leaders of companies telling me, man, things are just like sitting there in the CRM, rotting to death. And people are just saying, well, I don't know what the next steps are. A person's going to get back to me. Well, if you're not a good salesperson, then yeah, it's going to rot and you might lose the opportunity. If you're a good salesperson, you shouldn't have fear to say, this is the next step.
Mm.
And you're either qualifying or disqualifying. I mean,
Yeah.
I've got one account that stayed in limbo for 2 years. I would speak to him once in a while, and finally he decided to move forward. I knew how much effort I was going to put into that, and I just put a little bit of effort every 3-4 months to have a little phone call.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew the issue, and I knew the problem, and once it was solved, I went forward. But that I was aware of the reality. I put him in limbo, which is a form of disqualification, saying this guy's not going to be ready for a year.
Yeah. There's no critical event. There's no urgency. There's no.
And there's another client who I spoke to last March who said it was all interested. We're supposed to go in May, and it didn't happen. And he said, call me. I spoke to him in October, and finally spoke to him. Now it's closed because he wasn't ready.
Right.
Now, I spoke to him. I did all my. When I spoke to him last time, it could have gone the wrong way. It could have, and I would have just disqualified. It went the right way because I asked the right questions and we have a fit with each other.
Right.
So some people say, well, I never give up on an opportunity. Well, what does that mean? That's never give up on an opportunity, and it's a dead opportunity. You're just wasting your time, When someone's calling the same person, they have no clue. If you say, I know they're slow, I know it's going to be slow, and, it takes me 5 minutes every 3 months, and this nice person, and I know the reality, I know what's going on. There's other priorities. I'm not on the top of the urgency list. That's okay. That's part of your sales process. It's a long sales cycle.
Awesome. I think that's a good topic for another week on why you should disqualify, how you should disqualify. Disqualifying. Let's talk about disqualifying. Yeah. Next week, we have another guest.
Oh, yeah.
A week after that, we'll talk about disqualification.
So, final thought: to get the sales conversation to go in your favor, it does not necessarily mean you're going to sell.
Right.
It means you're going to find out.
Yeah, you're going to find out. Right. It's better to know that it's a no than to just have it sit there in your CRM, wasting away in forecasting and always missing your forecast numbers because you don't know.
Yes. If you know that it's a no, it's better than not
move on to the next thing.
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Fab.